Hello everybody, I am here in Port Townsend and I just recorded 30 minutes and I thought it got uploaded, but it might not have worked. So the reality is this is kind of a test broadcast. I'll see if someone can find me now. We talked about our thoughts and how we probably just have too many of them, too much data, too much thinking, too many ideas, too many tasks, too much stuff, perhaps. I realized one time years ago that when I went on vacation, I was so happy, and I realized I had less of everything. I have less, we're in a condominium. We have more than, maybe 8 plates, 8 forks, 8 knives, etc. We don't really need everything. Yeah, so I see people now, so this is great. It seems to be working. Oh, yeah, the video at 6 didn't show, so I'm not sure. It said it was working. I'm using a new format. This is from a friend up here I met, I'll say from church, and we talked about ideas for live streaming. So I just recorded about 30 minutes of trying to not listen to our thoughts. Talked about the book by, he didn't write it, but this is a really good book. Elder Paisios of the Holy Mountain by priest monk Christodoulos. If there was a saint or just a holy person that helps us with thoughts, with psychology, positive thinking, it would be Elder Paisios or Saint Paisios. And I just read this, so hopefully I can get this uploaded. That our thoughts really do affect our mood. Like, I was in a pretty good mood yesterday, turned on the news, heard something that was pretty distressing to me. I guess I can share what it is. It's one of the Black Lives Matter leader, Sean King, suggests that all images of Christ in his, images that show him as a white man and his European mother should be taken down immediately. Kind of took my breath away, because it was suggested that they're tearing down statues left and right. I'm not saying some of this isn't a bad idea. I do think that it should be done orderly and voting rather than just tearing it down. But I heard someone say, well, when will the cross be offensive? And then I think, oh, yikes. So hearing that put me in a bad mood, but I thought, no, I've got to love everybody. I've got to love John King and understand his world, so I went to try to understand it more. Realized I've always really been against a picture of Christ that was white, because I know he wasn't. And then reading his blog a little bit more, his Facebook, I realized, it is kind of white supremacy to suggest that Christ was white and his mother was European looking. So what's the harm in all that? So I went from being fearful black and white, no pun intended, very all or nothing to more peace about it. I think prayer is the key. We just have to pray more and think less. I've heard a couple of people say, I feel like I'm going to lose my mind. I've had this joke for a long time, and I said, well, maybe that's not a bad thing. I know it's not good for my business being a therapist to say, oh, Eric helped me lose my mind, but I think we think too much, and to be less in our minds and more in our hearts is a good place to be. I feel funny now that I actually have a viewer and it seems to be working. Should I redo what I just did? I think I will read some other parts of what I really like out of this book. And if you could see me now, I'm holding this up by my hand. I think maybe I'm gonna take a little walk and find a place where I can sit and have it all work out here. I tell you, there's something really nice about being at the ocean here. So let's see if I can get this to work. Hello. So, I want to show the beach a little bit better. I guess I should share a little bit about my experience being on vacation. So I was saying that we have less on a vacation. We're living out of a bag. It's very valuable to not have so much to have to deal with. There's less work, obviously. Less to do. So what did I do yesterday? Well, we took some kayaks to a lake, Lake Leland. I will say that the thoughts were trying to get me to think, oh, I hope that the kayaks are tied enough that they don't fall off. It's good to see you, Aaron. I see your messages here. Yeah, it's amazing how thoughts try to just peck at us, to just rob us of being in the moment. And I will admit, it's the longest distance we've taken these kayaks through the ferry to over here. They're strapped on, and catastrophic thinking tempts you to think, oh no, they've fallen off, and this is literally how it works. They fall off, and then they've hit someone, and someone goes off the road, and now they've passed away, which wouldn't be funny, and now I go to jail forever for manslaughter, So I shoo that away saying they're untied enough, okay? And I'm gonna be in the moment, and I can't control the outcome. Outcome independence is where we let go of the outcome. And it seems like our soul sickness involves us trying to control the outcome of something. And a lot of things work, I put my, pen to the paper and I can write, so I can expect that it's going to write. But in theory, I could have a stroke and end up not being able to write. So we have a lot of things we can just do. But there's some things that are beyond our control. And we lose our peace when we are so set on having things go the way we want. It's our biggest challenge in life to die to ourselves. It seems like in the computer window of my life, the choice is Eric's will and God's will and cancel. And the default, it's always preset to Eric's will, and I have to move the cursor over continuously to God's will throughout the day. When I do that, I have a great day. Yeah, I may have things that disappoint me, but I have peace. But we don't have peace when I try to control the outcome. I was facing a possibility of an illness with a kidney issue. That's another story that happened in January. I'm fine. But I realized during that time, what we all really want is peace and happiness. We just think that having no kidney problem would make me happy. Like, again, the catastrophic thinking made me think dialysis, etc., or seeing what my father went through. See, and yeah, bypass the actual story, bypass the actual content of our life. We're all looking for peace. Where are we going to find that peace? In God alone. That's the answer to the question. Our thinking gets in the way of it. Our thinking gets in the way of prayer. Yesterday I was kayaking, and so everything's loaded. We're going to a lake I'd never been to before. It was beautiful, just beautiful water, beautiful peace. It's like I was jumping up and down like a little kid. Like, it's just so beautiful. The water was just like a mirror. And so I thought, well, this is perfect. We should really go well. Zooming along. Everybody was quiet. There were fishermen, there were people there, but it was very quiet, like we're whispering outside. It was just my son and I, and we had packed a little lunch. So I felt this tendency that it was so good to want to control it, to make it even better. Like, don't lose this moment. It's like a perfect day, and that's where we have to surrender, let go, let go, let go. Anything can happen that could not be what we want, and then we lose our peace. So surrendering in the moment. Surrendering, often we think of it meaning loss, like I've lost something. But surrendering can also mean, and she thinks I'm late. And I mentioned this on the other videotape. I got bit by a dog right before like literally minutes before the podcast. It's actually kind of funny now that I think about it. What happens between the podcast, the time right before the podcast, pushing buttons to try to get something to work, and now I'm going to be talking about being peaceful and serene. How silly is that? But if I prayed and said, God, what is your will for my life and the power to carry it out? Like, at every hour of this day, reveal your will to me. I have to then accept that dog bites are part of that. So surrendering means to allow something else to take place. So for instance, I was planning all day whether I'm going to do the podcast, am I not going to do the podcast, I'm going to try this new software. Yeah, the flash was my wife calling me, which I think is fun to say, to be in the moment. So I walked down the stairs, I'm going to push the start button, and this woman asks me, can you help me? And it's like, well, okay. I don't want to tell her I'm going to do a live stream. I'm going to be on TV land. But I thought, well, let's see how this works. So she's an older woman, and she has 2 dogs, really cute, big, kind of white, fluffy dogs. And she says, I need help getting one in the car. And she says, are you a dog person? Yeah, I can be a dog person, but I kind of thought, how long will this take? She says, now one in the car is very protective of me, so you want to stay away from her. Okay. So I get Near that, the dog hops out, bites my leg. Actually, I might actually just show this. Let's see. Yeah, so I won't get into that, but that's the gory details of it. Got bit. Was a little bit shocked, a little bit miffed, like, you shouldn't have, okay, the negative thoughts, I'll confess, we're thinking you shouldn't have dogs when you can't control them. But that was my negative thinking. But surrendering at that moment says maybe God wants the podcast to be late. He obviously allowed my leg to get bit. What is his will in this? I learned that this woman's, I won't share her name, but this woman is a widow. She's not with her husband. She felt really, really bad. I just I didn't pack enough clothes for the vacation, so I went to the Goodwill, picked up these pair of pants. Pretty happy to get a pair of pants for $5. Now there's a dog bite in them. So surrendering allows for things like this to happen. I had learned from her that her husband, she decided to come back, but it was quite painful to come back to this vacation place. I'll say Call a Point, because she is not with her spouse. And so I'm reading the story there. I got to Live Vespers. Yeah, isn't that great? I was going to go to Live Vespers today. I thought it may be just too much to do. I had these grand plans of being there right outside the church. So surrendering means letting go, allowing God to come in, to take over. It's something that we have to, it seems, continuously surrender. Surrender the thoughts so we're not thinking so much. Surrendering extra stuff that I don't need. Surrendering is an act of humility. The proud don't really surrender. In fact, you can make an argument with any addiction that we don't have too weak a will, we have too strong a will. That I got hurt, from my addiction, and I'm fine. I'm going to try just harder not to do it anymore, versus surrender and say, I can't do this. I need help. It's beyond me. So being in the moment is a good thing. That's what I've been trying to practice. And I've actually gotten much more peace, much more happiness, much less physical pain, just by trying to not live in the past or in the future, but just be here and now. And you're going to get a kick out of this, because I'm already thinking, well, when I get home, will I keep this? Well, that's not living in the moment. But my goal is to try to live in the moment at home. And I think the only way I'm going to be doing that is by trying to not do so much, which creates too many thoughts. I'll share a story from this book, Elder Paisios of the Holy Mountain. I'll just start reading, because a lot of this. Father Paisios always insisted by saying, when one of our brothers has a negative thought, we must try to kindly and humbly try to correct it. It is our duty to do so. Today, many people, unfortunately, including some of our spiritual fathers, instead of trying to correct falsified thoughts, they either consent to them or even distort the positive ones. I will give you an example so you can understand the way they function. I think I'm going to go to a different story here. I was amazed at how he had changed the situation yeah, this was really amazing. So it says, I will now tell you a story regarding a very old father from Kapsala. The old father's machine was the kind that produced only positive thoughts. He only saw the good things in life, and he was blind to every evil. Once a group of people visited him and brought him a small radio as a present. The old father took it in his hands and examined it with lots of admiration. He asked where it was manufactured, and the visitors told him in Japan. As he was looking at it, suddenly he was filled with joy and started kissing the radio, saying, "Glory to God." The visitors asked him why he was glorifying God, and he explained it to them. You see, I am very pleased that Japanese Christians put the sign of the cross on the products they manufacture. The old father had noticed a positive and a simplistic and positive thought for the radio the visitors brought him. He also would look at a plane, in which we're hearing now, and see that as the shape of a cross. So a few years ago, I went to Athens for business and stayed at the house of a fellow Christian. The area was very noisy as the house was located near a central road. My friend told me that he had trouble sleeping at night due to the noise, so he ended up taking sleeping pills. How many of us struggle with sleep? After he had dinner, they took me to the room, and he told me, "Elder, this is your room, and I hope you'll be able to sleep despite the noise of the traffic." Next morning, when I got out of my room, my friend said I couldn't sleep all night due to the terrible noise. How about you? Elder Paisios says, I have never slept so well, not even on Mount Athos. That's where he lives, a very holy place. I have never slept so well, not even on Mount Athos. How is this possible, Father Paisios? Then I told him what had happened since the moment I entered into my room. So at the time, this was during the Vietnam War, and every day he was hearing sad stories in the news, and he used to pray to God to help the people in Vietnam. When I went into my room, I knelt in front of my bed. I put my head and hands on the bed and started praying for all the soldiers who were fighting and getting killed in Vietnam. I could hear the noise of the traffic, but as my mind was concentrated on the Vietnam War, I converted the traffic noise into the noise of the war tanks that were destroying buildings and killing people. Once in a while, a motorcycle was passing by, making a very loud noise that made the windows creak. I immediately associated this noise with the one of the airplanes bombing Vietnam. And I could see helpless children and old people getting killed. I felt a sweet grief inside me, and I was crying for the situation in Vietnam. And I despised myself for enjoying the luxury of a nice meal and a clean room and for not having any problem. As I was crying, I was filled with a peaceful spiritual calmness and finally fell asleep kneeling in front of my bed. The traffic noise did not interrupt my sleep at all, as my thoughts were directed to those suffering in Vietnam. So what a powerful story this is. It's really kind of brain twisting. Like, how is thinking initially about a war that's going on with killing and people dying and crying going to give you a good night's sleep? But that's how it was. He decided to focus mind on things that are worse than where he was and to be part of the solution by praying for it. He converted the noise from the outside streets, motorcycles, I think helicopter, motorcycle, etc., into good things, and as a reminder to help him to pray. And he said he felt a sweet grief inside, and it's hard to describe, but the grief is that here he has such a good place to be. Makes you count your blessings. Reminds me of a story where Father Arsenia, who is a priest who is stuck in a prison in Russia, very, very cold place, and they're thrown into basically a metal building which no one ever really gets out of alive. solitary. He's with a friend. And he says, now we can pray alone. Now we can actually have more freedom. And it's like, what a positive way to think about that, thrown into solitary. Now I can really go to meet God. And of course, in the story, a miracle happens where they survive. Not only do they survive, but the light of heaven opens up and keeps them warm. And they have the time of their life. So I'm going to run out of battery here soon. So between this about a half an hour and the last half hour, I'll see if I can't upload that. I do appreciate the viewers, and I miss you guys too. It should be fun to try to connect somehow. I don't know what, I do know this. I want to say this, I should announce this. I'm going to be doing a 12-step, I guess, workshop, getting everybody through the steps in 4 weeks, and it'll be the first Monday after 4th of July. So just do the math there. I don't know the exact dates, but it's the Mondays in July after the 4th of July. And it'll be from 6:30 to 8. There is no charge. You will get a link if you email me, eric@ericbolin.net. And I will send out all the information, a packet of information, and all you would need is an AA book that, and then whatever addiction you struggle with. It doesn't, and we're not going to really get into the problem so much about what the addiction is. It doesn't matter whether it's alcohol, whether it's drugs, marijuana, sexual addiction, food addiction, spending addiction, work addiction, or compulsively fixing others. I think we've covered that. All of those things have the same spiritual illnesses involved. And you'll find it very interesting how it relates to early Christianity. So